The fluorescent lights above me buzzed like angry wasps. Everything hurt. My ribs screamed with every shallow breath, and somewhere beneath the fog of pain medication, I could feel my left leg throbbing in rhythm with my racing heart. "Mr. Harrison, can you hear me?" A nurse leaned over me, her face swimming into focus. Kind eyes, worried mouth. "Yeah," I croaked. My throat felt like sandpaper. "You were in a car accident. You're at St. Mary's Hospital. We had to perform emergency surgery. Your spleen was ruptured and you had internal injuries. Do you remember anything?" Christmas Eve. I'd been driving to Laura's house. She'd invited me for dinner, said the grandkids wanted to see me. The roads were slick with ice, and I'd been careful, but careful wasn't enough when a truck ran a red light. Then headlights. The sound of metal crushing, glass shattering. Nothing after that. "My daughter," I managed. "Did you call Laura?" The nurse's expression shifted. Something flickered across her face. Pity, maybe, or disgust. She adjusted the blanket over my chest, her movements slow, deliberate, like she was buying time before answering. "We called her 5 hours ago, Mr. Harrison, right before your surgery." "Is she here?" The nurse straightened, adjusting my IV line. She didn't meet my eyes. Her hand trembled slightly as she checked the monitor beside my bed. She said she was hosting and couldn't make it. She told Dr. Peterson that if you didn't make it through surgery, we should just let her know. Before we continue, we ask you to hit the hype button, subscribe, and like the video to help the channel grow. Tell us which city you are from in the comments. We would like to get to know our audience better. The words came out flat, clinical, but I heard the edge underneath. She hung up before he could explain how serious your condition was. The room tilted, not from the medication this time. She said what? "I'm sorry, Mr. Harrison. I probably shouldn't have told you that. But I thought you should know." She squeezed my hand briefly. "You've been alone this whole time. No family. No one to list as your emergency contact except her. When you were in recovery, you kept asking for her. It broke my heart." I stared at the ceiling tiles, counting the small holes in each square. 43. I'd designed acoustic ceiling panels for 20 years before I retired. Force of habit, counting things, analyzing structures, finding weaknesses, finding load-bearing points and stress fractures. My daughter had a weakness too. I just hadn't wanted to see it. "Thank you," I whispered. After the nurse left, I lay there in the darkness, machines beeping around me like a mechanical Greek chorus. My chest felt hollow, and it had nothing to do with the surgery. The morphine drip fed into my arm, but no amount of medication could numb what I was feeling now. Laura was my only child. Her mother passed away when Laura was 12. Cancer, swift and relentless. I'd raised her alone, worked double shifts at the engineering firm to pay for her education, her wedding, her first house. When she said she wanted to stay home with the kids instead of working, I'd supported that too. Helped with the mortgage, paid for the grandkids' private school, bought them a new car when theirs broke down, covered medical bills, vacation expenses. Always there, always providing. And when I needed her most, she couldn't be bothered to leave her party. The pain medication pulled me under, but I didn't sleep peacefully. I dreamed of empty rooms and unanswered phones. I dreamed of my wife, Sarah, looking at me with disappointment in her eyes. "You spoiled her," she said in the dream. "You made her think the world owed her everything." Maybe I had. 3 days passed before Laura showed up. I was sitting in the hospital bed, eating terrible scrambled eggs and watching morning news, when she breezed in like she was doing me a favor. Designer handbag, expensive coat, the one I'd bought her last Christmas, hair perfectly styled, makeup flawless. She looked like she was heading to brunch, not visiting her father in the hospital. "Dad! Oh my God, you look terrible!" "Hello, Laura." She kissed my forehead, leaving a smudge of lipstick. The scent of her perfume, expensive, cloying, made my stomach turn. I'm so sorry I couldn't come sooner. You know how crazy the holidays are. The kids had their pageant, and then Brent's parents came into town, and we had the neighborhood party. It was absolute chaos. You wouldn't believe the stress I've been under. I almost passed away on the operating table. That stopped her, for maybe 3 seconds. Her eyes widened, and she touched her chest in a gesture that would have seemed genuine if I hadn't seen her practice it in mirrors when she was a teenager. But you didn't. You're tough. I knew you'd pull through. She settled into the visitor's chair, crossing her legs. Her shoes probably cost more than my monthly medication budget. So, when are they releasing you? Because our guest room is still full from the holidays, and I'm not sure we have space right now. Brent's sister is staying with us, and you know how small the house gets. The house I'd helped them buy, the house I'd co-signed for when their credit wasn't good enough. I'll manage, I said. Well, you can't go back to that big house alone, not in your condition. Maybe it's time we talked about assisted living. There's a nice facility near us. They have activities and everything. Bingo on Tuesdays, movie nights. You'd make friends. I'm 64, Laura, not 90. I'm just saying you're getting older, and that house is way too much for you to handle. All those stairs, the maintenance, the yard work. What if you have another accident? What if you fall and no one finds you for days? She leaned forward, her voice taking on a rehearsed quality. Brent and I have been talking. We think you should sell it. Downsize. We could help you find something smaller. An apartment maybe, or one of those senior communities. There it was, the real reason for her visit. I appreciate your concern, I said carefully. But I'm not ready to sell my home. Her jaw tightened. A muscle twitched near her eye. Dad, be reasonable. You can barely take care of yourself. What if something else happens? What if you have another accident? Who's going to take care of you? I can't drop everything every time you need help. You didn't drop everything this time. Excuse me? You didn't drop everything when I was having emergency surgery. You stayed at your party. Her face flushed. Who told you that? That nurse? She had no right. She had every right. I'm her patient. And apparently, I needed someone to care whether I lived or not. Laura stood up, grabbing her purse. You're being dramatic. I was in the middle of hosting 20 people. What was I supposed to do, abandon everyone? Tell them all to go home because my father had a little accident? A little accident? I was in surgery for 5 hours. Well, I'm here now, aren't I? She headed for the door, then paused. Her hand gripped the doorframe so hard her knuckles went white. Think about what I said. About the house. It makes sense, Dad. For everyone. You're just being stubborn because you don't want to admit you're getting old. She left before I could respond. I sat there, staring at the empty doorway, and something cold settled into my chest. Something that felt like clarity. The fog of familial love and obligation was lifting, and I was seeing my daughter clearly for the first time in years. My daughter wanted my house, and she was willing to wait for me to pass away to get it. No, not just willing, planning on it. They released me 4 days later. I called a car service because Laura said she was too busy to pick me up. Something about Emma's dental appointment and Jack's soccer practice. The driver, a kind older man named Marcus, helped me into my house, a modest 3-bedroom in a good neighborhood. I'd bought it 30 years ago, when Laura was 8 and Sarah was still alive. Every room held memories. The kitchen, where Sarah had taught Laura to bake. The living room, where we'd celebrated birthdays. The back deck, where I'd taught Laura to ride a bike. I thought about what the nurse had said. What Laura had said. How her voice had sounded when she talked about selling my house, eager, almost hungry. Then I went to my office and started making phone calls. First, I called my lawyer, George Morrison. We'd gone to college together, both engineering students who'd somehow ended up in different fields. He'd gone to law school. I'd stuck with structures and designs. But we'd remained close, fishing buddies and occasional poker partners. Ben, I heard about your accident. How are you feeling? I've been better, George. I need to talk to you about something. Can you come by? Of course. Tomorrow afternoon? Make it tonight. This can't wait. The urgency in my voice must have conveyed something because George didn't argue. I'll be there at 7. George arrived exactly on time, carrying his briefcase and wearing a concerned expression. I made coffee, decaf, doctor's orders, and we sat in my living room. The room felt different now, tainted somehow by Laura's visit and her casual cruelty. What's going on, Ben? I need you to review all my legal documents, estate planning, power of attorney, everything, and I need you to do it quietly. George's eyebrows rose. He set down his coffee cup carefully. Why the urgency? And why the secrecy? I told him about the accident, about Laura's phone call to the hospital, about her visit and her sudden interest in selling my house, about the way she'd looked at me, like I was already gone and she was just waiting for the formalities. I want to make sure everything is in order, that nothing can be changed or manipulated without my explicit consent. George pulled out a notepad, his lawyer brain already working. Smart thinking. Let me ask you something. Has Laura been involved in any of your financial decisions lately? Any joint accounts, co-signed documents, that sort of thing? She has access to one of my checking accounts. I added her years ago, in case of emergencies. You know, if something happened to me and bills needed to be paid. George's expression darkened. I'd recommend changing that immediately, tonight, if possible. And let's schedule a complete review of all your accounts, properties, and legal documents. I want to make sure there haven't been any unauthorized transactions. You think she'd steal from me? George met my eyes. I think desperate people do desperate things, and from what you've told me, she seems very interested in your assets. That interest, combined with her complete lack of concern for your well-being, raises red flags. We spent the next 3 hours going through everything. George took notes, asked questions, made lists. He wanted account numbers, property deeds, insurance policies, investment statements. When he left, he promised to have a full report within a week. In the meantime, he said at the door, don't sign anything, don't agree to anything. And if Laura asks about your finances, tell her you're consulting with your lawyer. Will do. And Ben, I hope I'm wrong about this, for your sake. So do I. But I didn't think he was wrong. The cold clarity that had settled over me in the hospital was still there, sharp and undeniable. I couldn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat in my office, looking through old photo albums. Laura as a baby, chubby and smiling. Laura on her first day of school, missing her 2 front teeth. Laura at her high school graduation, hugging me tight. Laura at her wedding, radiant in white, dancing with me while Sarah watched with tears in her eyes. Where had that girl gone? When had she become someone who could leave her father alone in a hospital, fighting for his life? Or had she always been this way, and I'd just been too blind to see it? George called 6 days later. Ben, we need to meet. Today, if possible. His tone made my stomach clench. It was the voice he used when delivering bad news, carefully controlled and professional. What did you find? Not over the phone. Can you come to my office? I drove there despite my still healing ribs protesting every bump in the road. The doctor had cleared me to drive, but every pothole felt like a fresh injury. George met me at the door, his face grim. Sit down, he said, leading me to his private office. I sat. George spread papers across his desk like evidence at a trial. Bank statements, property records, legal documents, transaction histories. The sheer volume of paperwork made my head spin. Someone has been systematically draining your savings account. Small withdrawals, nothing that would trigger alerts. But over the past 18 months, approximately $80,000 has disappeared. My vision blurred. The room seemed to tilt, 80,000? There's more. 3 months ago, someone attempted to transfer the deed to your house into Laura's name. The paperwork was rejected because it required a notarized signature, and the notary flagged it as suspicious. The signature didn't match your previous documents closely enough. Laura tried to steal my house? The signature on the transfer request is a forgery, but a good one. According to the notary's notes, when they called to verify, you didn't answer, and they couldn't confirm your identity, so they refused to process it. I remembered that week. I was on a fishing trip in Canada. No cell service. George nodded grimly. Exactly. Someone knew you'd be unreachable. Someone forged your signature and tried to push the transfer through while you were gone. If that notary hadn't been diligent, you would have returned home to find your house was no longer yours. I stood up, pacing. My ribs screamed, but I ignored them. The physical pain was nothing compared to the emotional agony ripping through me. Can you prove it was Laura? The request came from her email address. But that's not admissible in court by itself. She could claim her account was hacked. George paused, shuffling through more papers. However, I did some more digging. The checking account she has access to? She's been transferring money to Brent's business account. About $3,000 a month for the past 27 months. For what? According to the memo lines, household expenses and childcare reimbursement. But you've never agreed to pay them that amount regularly, have you? Never. I help out when they ask, but there was never any agreement for regular payments. Then it's theft, plain and simple. George leaned back in his chair. Ben, I think your daughter has been planning this for a while. She's been slowly draining your resources, trying to gain control of your property. The accident just accelerated her timeline. She thought you might not survive, and she wanted to make sure she was positioned to inherit everything. I sank back into my chair. The betrayal felt physical, like another car slamming into me. My chest tightened, and for a moment I wondered if I was having a heart attack. But no, this was just grief. Just the realization that my only child had been systematically robbing me. What can I do? First, we remove her access to all your accounts immediately. I've already drafted the paperwork. Second, we document everything and prepare for legal action if necessary. Third, George hesitated. Third, you need to accept that your relationship with your daughter may not survive this. In fact, it probably won't. It's already gone, I said quietly. I just didn't want to admit it. George pushed a stack of documents across the desk. These need your signature. They'll revoke Laura's access to your accounts and initiate a formal investigation into the unauthorized transfers. Once you sign these, there's no going back. Are you sure? I picked up the pen. My hand shook, but not from weakness, from rage. I signed every document. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about Laura's words at the hospital, how cold she'd been, how calculated, the way she'd looked at my house, my assets like they were already hers. I went down to the basement, to the boxes of old papers I'd been meaning to organize for years. Tax returns, medical bills, letters, receipts, the accumulated paperwork of a lifetime. I found what I was looking for in a box marked 2019, a letter from Sunset Gardens Senior Living addressed to me, except I'd never contacted any senior living facilities. I'd never even considered it. The letter thanked me for my inquiry and provided information about their memory care unit. It discussed costs, $4,000 a month for basic care, $6,000 for memory care. It outlined the process for admission, the paperwork required, the timeline. The inquiry had been made from my email address, but I'd never sent it. I checked the date. March 2019. Almost 4 years ago. Laura had been planning this for 4 years, maybe longer. I kept digging through the boxes, found more evidence I'd been too trusting to notice before. A credit card statement from 2020 with charges I didn't recognize. A medical bill for services I'd never received. A property tax adjustment I'd never requested. All small things. All easily explained away as mistakes or misunderstandings. But together, they painted a picture of systematic manipulation. I sat on the cold basement floor, surrounded by evidence of my daughter's betrayal, and something inside me shifted. The love I had for my daughter, that unconditional, fierce love that had driven me to work myself to exhaustion for her, began to curdle into something else: determination. If Laura wanted to play games, I'd show her what happened when you underestimated an engineer. Engineers don't just build things. We find weaknesses. We calculate stress points. We know exactly where to apply pressure to make something collapse. And I was going to take everything she'd tried to steal from me and burn her whole scheme to the ground. I stood up, ignoring the pain, and climbed the basement stairs with a box full of evidence. Time to get to work. The next morning I met with George again. This time I brought the letter and every suspicious document I could find. I'd spent the night organizing them chronologically, creating a timeline of Laura's deception. "I want to go on the offensive," I told him. George looked up from the papers, his reading glasses perched on his nose. "Meaning?" "I want to cut Laura off completely, remove her from my will, revoke any legal documents she's mentioned in, lock down every asset I have. Then I want to expose what she's been doing." "That's scorched earth, Ben. She tried to steal my house while I was bleeding out on an operating table. She's been draining my accounts for years. She's been planning to have me declared incompetent so she can take control of everything. What would you call it?" George studied me for a long moment. He'd known me for 40 years. He knew I wasn't impulsive, wasn't vindictive by nature. He knew that for me, to be this angry, this determined, something fundamental had broken. "Fair enough. Let me prepare the paperwork. But Ben, are you sure? Once we do this, there's no going back. Your relationship with your daughter will be over. You'll likely lose contact with your grandchildren, too. Emma and Jack deserve better than to learn from their mother that manipulation and theft are acceptable. Maybe losing me will teach them something." "All right. Give me a week." Over the next 2 weeks, George and I worked systematically. We changed every password, closed joint accounts, updated beneficiaries. I transferred most of my liquid assets into a new bank Laura didn't know about. I installed security cameras around my house and updated my alarm system. I changed the locks. I also did something else. I hired a forensic accountant. Her name was Patricia Chen, and she came highly recommended by George. Patricia was in her 50s, sharp-eyed and methodical. She'd worked for the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit before going private. "I've seen a lot of elder financial exploitation cases," she said during our first meeting. "Family members are the worst offenders. They have access, trust, and often power of attorney. They can drain someone dry before anyone notices. Can you trace where the money went? If it exists, I'll find it." Within a week, Patricia had traced every suspicious transaction, documented every unauthorized withdrawal, and built a timeline of Laura and Brent's financial manipulation. She even found things George had missed: small loans taken out in my name, credit cards I didn't know existed, investment accounts that had been liquidated. "This is actually impressive," Patricia said during our meeting, spreading her findings across the conference table in George's office. "Not impressive good. Impressive brazen. They didn't even try to hide most of it. They assumed you'd never check. Can we prove it in court?" "Absolutely. This is textbook financial elder exploitation. Combined with the attempted property transfer and the forged documents, you have a solid case. Criminal and civil. They could face jail time." "I don't want to sue her," I said. Both George and Patricia looked confused. "Then what do you want?" Patricia asked. "I want leverage." Understanding dawned on Patricia's face. "You want them scared. I want them to know I could destroy them if I wanted to. But more than that, I want everything they took back, every penny. And I want them to understand what they've done. I want them to feel what I felt in that hospital room." George leaned forward. "What's your plan?" I told them. The opportunity came in January during Laura's birthday dinner. She'd invited me, surprisingly. Probably thought enough time had passed. Probably thought I'd forgiven her, or at least forgotten. Or maybe she wanted to butter me up for another attempt at my assets. I accepted the invitation without hesitation. The dinner was at Marcello's, an expensive Italian restaurant, the kind with cloth napkins and waiters who describe every dish like poetry. The kind where entrees started at $40. Laura and Brent were already there when I arrived, along with their kids, Emma, 12, and Jack, 9. "Grandpa!" Emma hugged me carefully, aware of my injuries. "Hey, sweetheart, you've grown. 3 inches since summer." Jack showed me his new video game on his phone while we waited for our table. He chattered about school, about his soccer team, about a friend's birthday party. Normal kid stuff. Innocent. We settled into dinner. Small talk. The kids chattered about school. Brent talked about his consulting business, how well it was doing, how many new clients he'd landed. Laura smiled, played the perfect daughter, asked about my health with what seemed like genuine concern. I played along, smiled, nodded, waited. I waited until dessert was served. Tiramisu for Laura, chocolate cake for the kids. Nothing for me because I'd claimed to be too full. "Laura, I've been thinking about what you said. About the house." Her eyes brightened immediately. She set down her fork. "Really?" "Really, you were right. It's too much for me. I'm getting older. I should downsize." Brent leaned forward, trying and failing to hide his eagerness. "That's great, Ben. Really smart thinking. So I've decided to sell it." "Wonderful." Laura reached across the table, squeezing my hand. Her touch felt cold. "We can help you find something perfect, something manageable. Maybe a nice apartment near us so we can check on you regularly." "Actually, I've already found a place. A condo downtown, 2 bedrooms, great view, security desk, maintenance included. I'm closing next month." Laura's smile faltered. "Next month? That's fast." "When you're right, you're right. No point delaying." I took a sip of water, letting the moment stretch. "There's just one thing." "What's that?" "I need to reconcile some financial discrepancies first. George found some irregularities in my accounts. Money missing. Unauthorized transfers. Strange activity going back several years." The color drained from Laura's face. Brent's jaw tightened. Emma and Jack, bless them, were too focused on their desserts to notice the tension. "I'm sure it's just an accounting error," Brent said quickly. Too quickly. "That's what I thought too, until the forensic accountant I hired traced it all back to the joint checking account, the one Laura has access to." I met my daughter's eyes. They were wide now, panicked. "Funny thing, $80,000 disappeared from that account over 18 months, $3,000 a month going to your household, Brent's business, various expenses. Can you explain that?" Laura's mouth opened, closed, opened again. "Dad, I can explain." "Can you also explain why someone tried to transfer my house into your name while I was out of town, using forged documents with my signature?" The table went silent. Emma looked up from her cake. Jack's eyes went wide. "We should discuss this privately," Laura hissed. "Why? We're family, aren't we? This is just a family financial discussion." I pulled an envelope from my jacket pocket and placed it on the table. It was thick, heavy, with documentation. "That's a complete accounting of every unauthorized transaction, every forged document, every attempt to manipulate my assets. It's also a formal demand for repayment of all stolen funds, with interest." "You can't prove we stole anything," Brent said, but his voice shook. Sweat beaded on his forehead. "Actually, I can, in court. Patricia Chen is the best forensic accountant in the state. She's documented everything, every transaction, every signature, every lie. She found credit cards I didn't know existed, loans taken out in my name, investment accounts you liquidated." I leaned back. "It's all there, every crime documented and proven." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "Mom, what's Grandpa talking about?" "Nothing, honey. Your grandfather is confused." I'm not confused. Your mother has been stealing from me for years. She's been planning to have me declared mentally incompetent so she can take control of everything I own. She's been waiting for me to become weak enough or to pass away so she can take everything. Jack looked at his mother. That's not true. Right, Mom? Laura's eyes filled with tears, but they were angry tears, not remorseful ones. Dad, please. We needed that money. Brent's business was struggling. We were going to pay you back. We always planned to pay you back. You told the hospital to let you know if I didn't survive surgery. You weren't planning to pay me back. You were planning to inherit. The truth hung in the air, ugly and undeniable. Other diners were starting to glance over. The waiter hovered uncertainly nearby. You have 48 hours, I said quietly. You can return every penny you stole, sign legal documents promising never to interfere with my finances again, and hope I don't press charges. Or I can take this to the police, the courts, and everyone in your social circle, everyone at your country club, everyone at the kids' school, everyone you know. You wouldn't, Laura whispered. Try me. I stood up, pulled out my wallet, and left $200 on the table, more than enough to cover my share. Happy birthday, Laura. I left the restaurant, leaving my untouched dessert and my shattered family behind. Laura called the next morning at 6 a.m. I'd been awake for hours, sitting in my kitchen drinking coffee and watching the sunrise. Dad, please, we'll fix this. We'll figure something out. Return the money, all of it, by tomorrow. We don't have it. We spent it on the house, the kids' school, expenses. We don't have $80,000 just sitting around. That's not my problem. You stole from me. You tried to manipulate me. You wanted me to disappear so you could take everything. That's not true. Then explain the senior living facility inquiry, the one from 2019, the one I never made. Silence. You've been planning this for years, Laura, waiting for me to become weak enough, confused enough, that you could take control. Well, I'm not weak, I'm not confused, and I'm not going to let you destroy everything I built. Please, she whispered, don't do this. Think about the kids. Think about Emma and Jack. You're tearing this family apart. I didn't tear anything apart, you did, when you chose money over your father. We can work this out. We can go to family counseling. You should have thought about that before you left me alone in that hospital, before you told the doctor you were too busy to come, before you spent years stealing from me. Please. I hung up. The phone rang again immediately. I declined the call. It rang 15 more times over the next hour. I turned it off. That afternoon, George called my landline. They want to meet. They're ready to negotiate. Set it up. We met at George's office 2 days later. Laura and Brent looked terrible, sleepless, stressed, desperate. Laura's eyes were red and swollen. Brent had a nervous tick in his jaw. Good. George laid out the terms. They would sell assets to repay the stolen money. They would sign documents removing them from any connection to my estate. They would agree to supervised visitation with the grandchildren only if I chose to allow it. They would sign affidavits admitting to the theft and fraud. They would agree never to contact me except through legal channels. This is extreme, Brent protested. You're asking us to liquidate everything. We'll lose the house. So? George said coldly. You stole $80,000 from your father-in-law. You forged legal documents. You committed fraud. You're lucky he's not pressing criminal charges. We have kids! You should have thought about that before you decided to rob their grandfather. We negotiated for 3 hours. They tried to bargain, to justify, to make excuses. I sat there silent, letting George handle it. Every time they tried to appeal to me emotionally, I just stared at them until they looked away. Laura cried. She begged. She apologized. I'm sorry, Dad. I'm so sorry. I made a mistake. I was stressed and scared and I made bad decisions. But I'm your daughter. Doesn't that count for something? Not anymore, I said. Finally, they agreed. They would liquidate investments, sell Laura's car, take out a personal loan, borrow from Brent's parents, whatever it took to repay the money within 90 days. They signed the documents, their hands shaking. When it was done, Laura looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. "Are you happy now? You've destroyed us. You've taken everything." "No," I said quietly. "You destroyed yourselves. I just refused to be your victim." "The kids will hate you for this." "Maybe, but at least they'll learn that actions have consequences, that you can't steal from people and expect no repercussions." Brent stood up abruptly. "Let's go, Laura. We're done here." "Wait." I pulled out another envelope. "This is for Emma and Jack. Educational trusts. 50,000 each. They can access it for college, but only college. You can't touch it." Laura stared at the envelope. "I don't understand." "This isn't about them. It's about you. The kids are innocent. They deserve a future, even if their parents are thieves." Brent grabbed the envelope, and they left without another word. George and I sat in silence for a long moment. "How do you feel?" George finally asked. I thought about it. Empty, but also free. "What will you do now?" "Exactly what I told them. Sell the house, buy that condo, start over." I stood up, gathering my coat. "Without them." 3 weeks later, movers packed up my house. I watched them load boxes, furniture, the accumulated treasures of 30 years. Emma and Jack came by. Laura had reluctantly allowed it after I'd insisted through George. "Why are you moving, Grandpa?" Emma asked. She looked smaller than I remembered. "Sometimes you need a fresh start, sweetheart." "Mom's been crying a lot. She says you hate her now." I knelt down, ignoring my protesting ribs. They still ached sometimes, especially when it rained. "I don't hate her, but I can't trust her anymore, and without trust, we can't have a relationship. Will we still see you?" "If you want to, but it'll be different now." Jack hugged me tight. "I love you, Grandpa." "I love you too, buddy." Emma pulled back, her young face serious. "What Mom did was wrong, wasn't it?" "Yes." "She said she was just trying to help. That you needed someone to manage your money." "That's not what happened. She took money that wasn't hers. She lied. Those things are wrong, no matter how she tries to justify them." "Will you ever forgive her?" I looked at my granddaughter, at her honest eyes and earnest expression. "I don't know, Emma. Maybe someday. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, and it doesn't mean letting people hurt you again." After they left, I walked through the empty house one last time. I'd raised Laura here, celebrated birthdays, holidays, milestones, grieved my wife within these walls, built a life, a family, a future. But it was just a building. The people who'd made it home were gone. I locked the door and walked away without looking back. The condo was smaller, modern, manageable. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, an open floor plan, security desk in the lobby, no yard to maintain, no stairs to climb. I spent February settling in, organizing my new life. Patricia Chen confirmed that Laura and Brent were making payments, slowly, painfully, but consistently. They'd sold Laura's Mercedes and bought a used Honda. They'd put their house on the market. Brent's parents had loaned them money, but not without conditions. His mother had apparently been furious when she learned what they'd done. In March, I got a letter. It was from Laura, handwritten on nice stationery, the kind she used for thank you notes. "Dad, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even know if I deserve the chance to explain. But I need you to know, it wasn't about the money. Not really. After Mom passed away, I watched you grieve. I watched you work yourself to exhaustion, trying to fill the hole she left, and I felt like I could never be enough, like I could never replace what you lost. As I got older, I resented it, resented that you gave everything to me, but never seemed happy, never seemed satisfied. I told myself you owed me for being the replacement, for being the consolation prize. I was wrong, so wrong. You were a good father, the best, and I destroyed that because I was selfish and scared and stupid. I understand if you never want to see me again, but I needed you to know. I'm sorry. Truly, deeply sorry. The kids ask about you every day. Emma cries at night. Jack drew you a picture but was too scared to send it. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but they deserve their grandfather, your daughter, Laura. I read the letter 3 times. Then I put it in a drawer and went about my day. Some betrayals cut too deep for apologies. Spring came. I found routines in my new life. Coffee at the corner shop every morning, where the barista learned my order. Walks along the river at sunset. Dinners with George and his wife. I reconnected with old colleagues from the engineering firm, joined a community center, started volunteering at a literacy program. Life moved forward, as it always does. Patricia called in May. Final payment came through yesterday. You're fully repaid, with interest as stipulated in the agreement. Thank you, Patricia, for everything. What will you do now? Live, I said simply. Just live. In June, Emma graduated from middle school. I received an invitation in the mail, pale blue cardstock with silver lettering. Laura had written a note on the back. Please come. It would mean everything to her. I sent a card with a generous check made out to Emma, for her college fund, not her parents. I didn't attend the ceremony. I heard through George that Laura and Brent had sold their house, downsized dramatically to a small rental. Brent's consulting business had collapsed under the financial strain and the damage to his reputation. They'd moved to a smaller town an hour away, started over with less. Laura had gotten a job, her first in 15 years. Retail, George said. Manager at a department store. Good. Let them understand what it felt like to lose everything. Let them rebuild from nothing, the way I was doing. Summer turned to fall. I took up painting, something I'd always wanted to try. I was terrible at it, but it didn't matter. The act of creating something, of focusing on brush strokes and color, was meditative. I dated a woman named Margaret, a widow I met at the community center. It didn't last, neither of us was really ready, but it was nice while it lasted. Nice to remember that connection was still possible. I took Emma and Jack to lunch once a month. Laura dropped them off at a neutral location, never getting out of her car. The kids were careful around me at first, like I might break, but gradually they relaxed. We talked about school, friends, their interests. I didn't ask about their mother, and they didn't volunteer information. Are you happy, Grandpa? Emma asked one day in September. We were at a diner, splitting a plate of fries. Getting there, I said honestly. Are you? She considered. It's different now. Mom works a lot. Dad is stressed all the time. We moved and I miss my friends, but... She paused. I think we needed it, the change. We were living wrong before. How do you mean? We had all this stuff, but we weren't really happy. Mom was always worried about what people thought. Dad was always trying to make more money. Now we have less, but it's quieter. Does that make sense? Perfect sense. Jack looked up from his chocolate shake. Mom talks about you sometimes. She says she wishes she could go back and do everything different. We all wish that sometimes. Do you? I thought about it. No. Because if I'd kept ignoring the truth, I'd still be letting your mother hurt me. Sometimes you have to break things to fix them. October brought news through George. Laura's mother-in-law had passed away, leaving Brent a small inheritance, enough to pay off the remaining debt to me early. George called with the news. They want to know if this settles everything, if you'll consider reconciliation. What do you think I should do? That's not my call, Ben. But I will say this. They've kept every term of the agreement. They've paid back every penny. Laura has maintained steady employment. They haven't tried to contact you except through approved channels. If people can change, they're at least trying. Trying doesn't erase what they did. No, but it counts for something. I thought about Emma and Jack, about the way Emma talked about the changes in their family, about how Jack had started drawing again, something he'd stopped doing during the successful years. Tell them the debt is settled, financial and otherwise. But tell them I'm not ready for reconciliation. Maybe someday. Not today. Fair enough. November came. Thanksgiving. I spent it with Margaret and her family, surprisingly. We'd remained friends after our brief romance ended, and she'd invited me to her daughter's house. It was loud, chaotic, full of kids and laughter and arguments over football games. It felt like family. Not my family, but family nonetheless. On the drive home, Margaret said, "You seemed happy today?" I was. But nothing. I was happy. That's enough. She smiled. Good. You deserve happy. December arrived, bringing with it the anniversary of the accident. 1 year since everything had changed. I woke up on Christmas Eve and looked out at the city, covered in fresh snow. The condo was decorated simply. A small tree, some lights, nothing elaborate. My phone rang. Laura's number. I stared at it for a long moment, my thumb hovering over the answer button. Then I declined the call. Some bridges, once burned, stay ashes. I sent a text. "Merry Christmas. Give my love to Emma and Jack." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then appeared again. "Merry Christmas, Dad. Thank you." I poured myself coffee, put on music, and settled into my chair by the window. My ribs no longer hurt. The scars had faded. I'd healed. Not completely, maybe never completely, but enough. I thought about the past year, betrayal, revenge, justice, consequences, the difference between forgiveness and allowing yourself to be victimized. I'd won. Not by destroying Laura and Brent, though I could have. I'd won by refusing to be destroyed, by reclaiming my dignity, my assets, my life. That was the real revenge. Not tearing them down, but rebuilding myself. I raised my coffee cup to the window, to the snow, to the life I'd rebuilt from wreckage. To survival, I whispered. Outside, the city sparkled with Christmas lights. Inside, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace.